Millionaire hires a private chef, then learns she's pregnant with his twins. Isabella Martinez never expected a simple cooking job would completely transform her life. After years of culinary school and restaurant work, she thought cooking for a reclusive millionaire would be her big break. Not the beginning of a story that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, family, and second chances. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The elegant kitchen gleamed under soft lighting as Isabella arranged her knives on the marble countertop. It was her first day as private chef to tech millionaire Ethan Blackwood, and everything needed to be perfect. At 32, this was the opportunity she'd been working toward since graduating from culinary school. Stable hours, creative freedom, and pay that would finally help her climb out of student debt. "You must be Isabella." A deep voice startled her from the doorway. She turned to find a tall man with dark hair and piercing blue eyes watching her. Ethan Blackwood was even more imposing in person than in the business magazine photos she'd studied before the interview. He wore casual clothes, expensive jeans and a simple gray sweater, but there was nothing casual about his presence. "Yes, Mr. Blackwood," she replied, extending her hand. "Thank you for this opportunity." His handshake was firm but brief. "Ethan, please, and the opportunity is mine. Your portfolio is impressive." Isabella felt a flush of pride. Her portfolio had showcased her journey from her grandmother's Mexican kitchen to prestigious restaurants across the country, culminating in her specialty of fusion cuisine that blended her heritage with classical techniques. "I've prepared a sample menu for your approval," she said, sliding a folder across the counter. "But I'd like to know your preferences before finalizing anything." Ethan barely glanced at it. "I trust your judgment. That's why I hired you. The only rule is no seafood. Allergic." Isabella nodded, mentally striking several planned dishes. "Noted. I work unusual hours," he continued. "Sometimes I'll eat at midnight, sometimes at dawn." "Is that going to be a problem?" "Not at all. My contract says I'm on call for your mealtimes, whatever they may be." Something flickered across his face. Approval, perhaps. "Good. I'll be in my office. Surprise me with lunch around 1. After he left, Isabella released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She'd expected eccentricity from a man who had built a billion-dollar tech security company from his garage, but not this intense, almost cold demeanor. The dossier her agency had provided mentioned he was divorced, no children, and rarely made public appearances despite his company's high profile. Isabella opened the refrigerator to find it impeccably stocked with everything she'd requested. At least that part would be easy. She began preparing a simple but elegant lunch, something to showcase her skills without overwhelming him on the first day. As she worked, she couldn't help noticing the emptiness of the massive house. Despite its architectural beauty, the place felt unlived in, like a museum rather than a home. No photos adorned the walls, no personal touches softened the modern design. It reflected its owner, impressive but guarded. At precisely 1 o'clock, Isabella knocked on Ethan's office door with a tray. When no answer came, she hesitated, then carefully pushed the door open. Ethan sat at his desk, staring intently at multiple screens displaying lines of code. He didn't look up. "Mr. Blackwood? Ethan? Lunch is ready." He blinked, seeming to return from somewhere far away. "Already? Set it down, please." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Isabella placed the tray beside him, roasted chicken with a mole sauce inspired by her grandmother's recipe, served with cilantro rice and seasonal vegetables. Simple enough for a first meal, but with flavors that told her story. She was turning to leave when he spoke. "Stay." Isabella paused. "Excuse me?" "Please stay, while I taste it." His expression was unreadable. "I'd like your explanation of the dish." She watched nervously as he took the first bite. For a moment, his face remained impassive. Then something extraordinary happened. Ethan Blackwood closed his eyes, and a small, genuine smile transformed his stern features. "This is," he began, then took another bite. I haven't tasted anything like this in years. It's my grandmother's mole recipe, with a few modifications, Isabella explained, relief washing over her. The chocolate is stone ground, and I've reduced the heat to let the complex flavors come through. Ethan nodded, continuing to eat with evident enjoyment. Where did you learn to cook like this? My grandmother's kitchen in Mexico City, initially. Then culinary school in New York, and restaurants in Chicago, San Francisco, and here in Boston. She hesitated, then added, Food tells stories. This dish is my heritage mixed with my training. Something in his expression shifted. Stories and food, he repeated quietly. I like that. That first meal established their routine. Isabella would prepare his meals, and Ethan would insist she stay while he ate, asking questions about the dishes, the ingredients, the techniques. At first, their conversations were strictly culinary, but as weeks passed, they began to reveal small pieces of themselves. Isabella learned that Ethan had built his company from nothing after dropping out of MIT, that his parents had died when he was in college, that his divorce 3 years ago had left him wary of relationships. In turn, she told him about growing up between two countries, about her grandmother who had taught her that food was love made visible, about the restaurants where she'd worked to perfect her craft while male chefs took credit for her innovations. Why become a private chef, he asked one evening over her braised short ribs. With your talent, you could run your own restaurant. Isabella arranged fresh herbs on his plate before answering. Someday, perhaps. But restaurant kitchens can be brutal, the hours, the culture. And creative control is hard to come by unless you own the place, which requires capital I don't have. Ethan studied her for a moment. You should have your own place. Your food deserves a wider audience. Thank you, she said, surprised by his certainty. That means a lot coming from you. Why? I'm just someone who enjoys eating. You're someone who built something from nothing. That's what I want to do. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the professional boundary between them seemed to waver. Ethan cleared his throat and looked away first. Will you be here for the dinner party next week? My board members are coming. Isabella nodded. Of course, I've already planned the menu. The dinner party changed everything. Isabella spent days preparing, determined to impress Ethan's colleagues. She created a multi-course feast that showcased both her technical skill and her personal touch. As she served the main course, she overheard one board member, a silver-haired woman named Margaret, speaking to Ethan. She's remarkable, Ethan. I haven't eaten like this since Paris. Where did you find her? An agency, he replied, but his eyes followed Isabella as she moved around the table. But I think she found me. Later, as guests lingered over dessert, Ethan appeared in the kitchen where Isabella was cleaning up. Everyone is raving about the food, he said, leaning against the counter. Margaret wants to hire you away from me. Isabella smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. I'm happy where I am. Are you? His voice had dropped lower, more intimate. She looked up to find him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Ethan. I know, it's inappropriate. I'm your employer. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty from a man who always seemed so controlled. But I find myself thinking about you even when you're not cooking for me. Isabella felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with professional pride. For weeks she'd told herself that her growing attraction to Ethan was one-sided, inappropriate, something to be suppressed. I should go, she said quietly. The party can manage without me for 5 minutes. He took a step closer. Tell me I'm not alone in this, Isabella. The professional part of her brain screamed warnings about power imbalances, about jeopardizing her career, about the complications that would inevitably follow. But another part, the part that had noticed how his eyes crinkled when he truly smiled, how he always asked about her day before discussing the meal, how he remembered every detail she shared about her family. That part couldn't lie. You're not alone, she admitted. But this is complicated. Life is complicated, he said, reaching out to touch her cheek. "Food tells stories, you once told me. What story are we telling?" "I don't know yet," she whispered, "but I'd like to find out." Their first kiss tasted of the chocolate soufflé she'd made for dessert. Rich, warm, and unexpectedly perfect. After that night, everything changed. They tried to maintain professionalism during work hours, but their relationship evolved rapidly. Isabella still prepared his meals, but now they often ate together. She began staying overnight, then gradually moving her things into his home. 3 months into their relationship, Isabella realized she was late, very late. The pregnancy test confirmed what her body had already been telling her. Pregnant. She stared at the 2 lines in disbelief, mind racing through the implications. She and Ethan had been careful, mostly. There had been that night after the charity gala, and the morning in the kitchen when passion had overtaken planning. But still, the timing couldn't be worse. They were still figuring out their relationship, navigating the transition from employer-employee to equals. How would Ethan react? His divorce had been bitter, according to the bits he'd shared. His ex-wife had wanted children. He had been focused on his company. Would he see this as a trap? As history repeating itself? Isabella placed a hand on her still flat stomach, suddenly fiercely protective of the life growing inside her. Whatever happened with Ethan, this baby was part of her now. Part of her story. When the doctor called with the results of her blood work, the news doubled her shock. "Congratulations, Miss Martinez. You're carrying twins." Twins. 2 babies. The room seemed to spin around her. That evening, she prepared Ethan's favorite meal, a simple pasta with the heirloom tomato sauce that had made him propose a marriage proposal to the plate on their 3rd date. Her hands trembled slightly as she chopped basil. "Something special tonight?" Ethan asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Isabella leaned back against him, savoring the moment. What if it was one of the last easy moments between them? "We need to talk," she said, turning in his arms to face him. His expression immediately grew concerned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong exactly." She took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant, Ethan, with twins." His face went completely blank, a reaction worse than any she had imagined. His arms dropped from around her, and he took a step back. "Twins," he repeated, his voice flat. "You're sure?" Isabella nodded, trying to read his expression. "I saw the doctor today. I'm about 8 weeks along." Ethan turned away, bracing his hands against the counter. For a long, terrible moment, he said nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice was strained. "I need some time to process this." Without another word, he walked out of the kitchen. Moments later, Isabella heard the front door close. She stood frozen, the sauce beginning to bubble over on the stove. This was exactly what she had feared. That the news would overwhelm him, send him retreating behind the walls he'd only recently begun to lower. Isabella mechanically turned off the burner and covered the pot. Then she sank into a chair, allowing herself to cry for the first time since seeing those 2 lines on the test. Hours passed. Isabella moved from the kitchen to the living room, waiting. When midnight came with no word from Ethan, she finally went to bed alone, her mind racing with contingency plans. She could return to her apartment, still kept as a formality. She could call her sister in Chicago. The bedroom door opened softly around 2 a.m. Ethan's silhouette appeared, backlit by the hallway light. "Are you awake?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she answered, sitting up and turning on the lamp. Ethan looked exhausted, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed. He sat on the edge of the bed, not quite touching her. "I'm sorry I walked out," he began. "That was unforgivable." "Where did you go?" Isabella asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Driving, mostly. Then to the office." He rubbed his face. "I needed to think." "And what did you think about?" Ethan took a deep breath. "About how history repeats itself. About my father, who was never there. About my ex-wife, who wanted children I wasn't ready for. About how terrified I am of failing at the most important job anyone could have." Isabella felt tears threatening again. "I understand if this isn't what you want." "That's just it," he interrupted, finally looking directly at her. "I didn't know what I wanted until I was driving along the coast tonight, thinking about losing you, thinking about the family we could have." Hope flickered in Isabella's chest. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm scared. Terrified, actually." A small smile touched his lips. "But also, happy. I never thought I would have this chance again. A family. With someone He hesitated. "Someone you what?" she whispered. "Someone I love," he finished, the words coming out in a rush. "I love you, Isabella. I think I have since that first meal, when you made me taste your story." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they were different tears now. "I love you too." Ethan reached out, tentatively placing his hand on her stomach. "Twins," he said, wonder replacing the fear in his voice. "Two little people who will be part of both of us." "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Isabella asked. "It's happening very fast." "No," he admitted with surprising honesty. "I'm not ready. But I want to be. I want to learn, with you." He slid closer, taking her hands in his. "I don't want to be my father, absent and cold. I don't want to repeat the mistakes of my marriage. I want to build something new with you. A family. A home that's actually lived in." Isabella squeezed his hands. "I'm scared too, you know. My career, my plans, everything is changing. But when I think about these babies, our babies." She guided his hand back to her stomach. "I know we can figure it out together." Ethan leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. "Together," he agreed. "That's a good place to start." A millionaire hires a private chef, then learns she's pregnant with his twins. The next morning, Isabella woke to find Ethan already awake, sitting up against the headboard with his laptop open. But instead of his usual work emails or code, she glimpsed baby furniture on the screen. He quickly closed it when he noticed her stirring. "Were you looking at cribs?" she asked, unable to hide her smile. Ethan looked slightly embarrassed. "Just researching. Apparently, we need two of everything." "Not everything," Isabella said, sitting up beside him. "They can share some things." "Like what?" "Love," she said simply. "They'll share our love." Ethan's expression softened as he pulled her closer. "That they will have in abundance." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of adjustments and planning. Isabella continued working as Ethan's chef, but now with modified hours and a growing consideration for her pregnancy symptoms. Morning sickness hit her hard, ironically making cooking, her passion and profession, a challenge. "The irony isn't lost on me," she groaned one morning, emerging from the bathroom to find Ethan waiting with ginger tea. "A chef who can't stand the smell of food. Your body is busy with more important creations right now," he said, helping her back to bed. "The cooking can wait." His tenderness surprised her. The man who had once seemed so remote, so contained within himself, now researched pregnancy symptoms late into the night and had installed 3 different pregnancy apps on his phone. He attended every doctor's appointment, asking so many detailed questions that their obstetrician finally handed him a stack of books. "For the particularly curious parent," the doctor had said with an amused smile. At 12 weeks, they saw the twins clearly for the first time on ultrasound. 2 distinct profiles, 2 beating hearts. "They're perfect," Ethan whispered, gripping Isabella's hand so tightly it almost hurt. Isabella watched his face, seeing the emotion he couldn't quite express. For a man who had built walls around himself for so long, allowing himself to love these tiny beings, still abstract, still mostly theoretical, was an act of profound courage. Later that evening, as they sat in the kitchen where their story had begun, Ethan surprised her with a small velvet box. "This isn't because of the babies," he said immediately as he placed it before her. "Or, not only because of them. I've been thinking about this since before we knew." Isabella's heart raced as she opened the box to reveal a stunning emerald ring surrounded by small diamonds. "Green like your eyes," Ethan explained. "Not traditional, but then, neither are we." "Are you asking?" Isabella began, her voice catching. "I'm asking if you'll marry me," Ethan confirmed. "Not as the mother of my children, though you'll be extraordinary at that. Not as my chef, though your cooking first opened my heart. But as the woman I love, who somehow saw past all my defenses to the person I could be." Tears spilled down Isabella's cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "Of course, yes." Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, then surprised her further by placing a second small box on the table. "What's this?" she asked. "Open it." Inside was a key and a business card for a commercial real estate agent. "I don't understand," Isabella said, looking up at him in confusion. "Your restaurant," Ethan explained. "Your dream. The babies don't mean you have to give that up." Isabella stared at the key. "Ethan, opening a restaurant now, with twins on the way." "Not now," he interrupted gently. "But when you're ready. The space will be waiting. It's yours, whatever you decide to do with it." "You bought me a restaurant?" she asked incredulously. "I bought you possibility," he corrected. "The same way your food gave me a taste of possibility when I'd forgotten what it felt like." Isabella fingered the key, emotions warring within her. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep dreaming," Ethan urged. "Say our children will grow up watching their mother build something extraordinary, the way you've always wanted to." Isabella looked at the man before her, so different from the cold, distant figure who had first hired her, and felt a swell of love so powerful it took her breath away. "I'll need a new business plan," she said finally. "Babies and restaurants are both full-time commitments." "Good thing you're marrying someone who knows a thing or two about business plans," Ethan replied with a smile. That night, as they lay in bed discussing names and futures, Isabella felt the first flutter of movement, like butterfly wings inside her abdomen. "Ethan," she gasped, grabbing his hand and placing it on her slight bump. "I think I felt them move." Though it was too early for him to feel anything from the outside, the wonder on his face mirrored her own. This was real. This was happening. They were creating a family together. As Isabella's pregnancy progressed, her body changed dramatically. Carrying twins meant she grew larger more quickly, making her usual chef's uniform impossible by the 5th month. Ethan surprised her with custom-designed chef coats that accommodated her growing belly. "You didn't have to do this," she said, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "You're still the chef," he replied simply. "The best one I know." Despite her modified schedule, Isabella insisted on continuing to work. Cooking grounded her amid the rapid changes in her life. When her ankles swelled after long hours in the kitchen, Ethan would insist on massaging them while they discussed the latest ultrasound or the nursery design. They decided not to learn the babies' sexes, preferring the surprise. This led to a gender-neutral nursery painted in soft yellows and greens, with 2 identical cribs positioned side by side. "They've been together from the beginning," Isabella explained when the decorator suggested separate areas. "I don't want them to feel alone." Ethan had nodded, understanding perfectly. He knew about loneliness in ways few others did. At 6 months pregnant, Isabella insisted on meeting Ethan's ex-wife. The request startled him. "Why would you want to do that?" he asked, visibly uncomfortable. "Because she was important to you," Isabella replied, "and because I want to understand what happened, from her perspective." "The divorce wasn't pleasant," Ethan warned. "She might not want to meet you." But to his surprise, when he reached out, Sophia agreed readily. They met at a quiet cafe, away from Ethan's usual haunts. Sophia arrived first, a striking woman with short blonde hair and an air of confidence that Isabella immediately admired. "Thank you for meeting me," Isabella said after the initial awkward introductions. Sophia studied her with curious eyes. "When Ethan called, I almost didn't believe it. He's different now." "Different how?" Isabella asked. "He called, for one thing," Sophia said with a small smile. "The old Ethan would have sent an email, and he sounds, I don't know, present, connected." She glanced at Isabella's prominent baby bump. "You've clearly worked some kind of miracle." Isabella shook her head. "No miracles, just patience. And food." "Food?" Sophia looked puzzled. "I was his chef before. Everything else," Isabella explained. Understanding dawned on Sophia's face. "So you got past his defenses through his stomach." "Clever." "It wasn't a strategy," Isabella protested. "It just happened." Sophia's expression softened. "I'm glad it did. Ethan is complicated. Brilliant, caring in his way, but distant. I couldn't reach him where he lived. And you wanted children, Isabella said carefully. Sophia nodded. I did. He didn't. Or said he didn't. She glanced at Isabella's stomach again. Obviously, things have changed. I think he was afraid, Isabella said quietly, of becoming his father. He told you about his father? Sophia looked genuinely surprised. It took me years to get that story out of him. They talked for nearly 2 hours. These two women who had loved the same complicated man. By the end, Isabella understood more clearly the journey Ethan had taken, from the wounded, walled-off person Sophia had known to the man now preparing for fatherhood with equal parts terror and joy. As they were saying goodbye, Sophia squeezed Isabella's hand. Take care of him, she said. He pretends to be invulnerable, but he's not. I know, Isabella replied, and thank you for helping me understand. When Isabella told Ethan about the conversation later, he seemed relieved. You're not upset? Why would I be upset? She helped me see parts of you I might have missed otherwise. Ethan shook his head in wonder. Most women wouldn't want their fiancé, ex-wife offering insights. I'm not most women, Isabella reminded him with a smile. And our story isn't most stories. The 7th month brought a scare, premature contractions that sent them rushing to the hospital in the middle of the night. Twins often came early, the doctors warned, as they administered medication to stop the labor. For 3 days, Isabella remained hospitalized, monitors strapped to her belly tracking the baby's heartbeats and her contractions. Ethan never left her side, working remotely from a chair pulled up beside her bed. Go home, she urged on the 2nd night. Get some real sleep. I am home, he replied, not looking up from his laptop. Wherever you 3 are, that's home now. The medication worked, and the contractions stopped. But the doctor ordered strict bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy. You need to stay off your feet, the specialist emphasized. These babies need more time to develop. Being confined to bed was torture for Isabella, who had spent her entire adult life in constant motion in kitchens. Now she found herself dependent on others in ways that challenged her fiercely independent nature. Ethan hired a temporary chef, following Isabella's detailed instructions for his meals. But it wasn't the same, and they both knew it. Food had been their love language, the foundation of their connection. Without her cooking for him, something essential seemed missing. Then Ethan had an idea. He moved a small table beside their bed and began bringing her ingredients, pre-washed, pre-chopped, ready for assembly. What's this? She asked the first time. Mise en place, he explained, using the culinary term for prepared ingredients. I can be your hands, you be the brain. And so began their new ritual. Each evening, Ethan would bring the prepared ingredients to the bedroom, and Isabella would direct him in combining them, teaching him her techniques and secrets as they worked together to create meals. More heat, she'd instruct as he tentatively stirred a sauce. Don't be afraid of it. Like this? He'd ask, adjusting the flame. Perfect. Now add the herbs, but don't bruise them. His first attempts were clumsy, but he improved quickly under her guidance. Soon they were creating simplified versions of her signature dishes together, laughing at his mistakes and celebrating his successes. You're a good student, Isabella observed one evening as they enjoyed the pasta he had prepared under her direction. I have an excellent teacher, he replied. And strong motivation. With bed rest came more time for planning, both for the babies and for Isabella's future restaurant. She sketched menu ideas and interior designs, while Ethan brought her samples of everything from flooring materials to font options for the logo. What about gemelos? She suggested one afternoon, looking up from her sketchbook. For the restaurant name? What does it mean? Twins in Spanish, she explained. To honor our beginning, Ethan considered it, rolling the word over his tongue. Gemelos. I like it, simple but meaningful. As the 8th month began, they married in a private ceremony in their home. Isabella, still on bed rest, wearing a flowing dress that accommodated her enormous belly. Only their closest friends attended, along with Isabella's family, who had flown in from Mexico and Chicago. Not exactly the wedding I imagined as a girl, Isabella admitted as they exchanged rings in their bedroom, an ordained friend officiating. We can have another ceremony later, Ethan promised. As big or small as you want. No, she said, surprising herself. This is perfect. intimate, real, like us. Her grandmother, who had traveled from Mexico City despite her arthritis, blessed them in Spanish, her weathered hands resting gently on Isabella's stomach. "She says the babies will be born with the flavors of love already on their tongues," Isabella's sister translated, wiping away tears. 2 weeks after the wedding, at 36 weeks, Isabella's water broke. This time, there was no stopping the baby's arrival. "They're ready," the doctor confirmed after examining her. "And so are you." The labor was intense but mercifully quick for twins. Ethan remained by Isabella's side throughout, his normally controlled demeanor giving way to naked emotion as he encouraged her through each contraction. "You're the strongest person I've ever known," he told her as she pushed. "You can do this." After 6 hours, their daughters entered the world, Sophia Elena and Carmen Rose, named for their grandmothers. 2 perfect girls with dark hair and lungs, powerful enough to announce their arrival to the entire maternity ward. "They're here," Ethan whispered in awe as the nurses placed the swaddled infants in their arms. "They're really here." Isabella, exhausted but elated, watched as her husband, this man who had once seemed so remote, so unreachable, cradled their daughter with tears streaming unashamedly down his face. "Hello, little one," he murmured to the baby. "I'm your dad." The first weeks at home were a blur of feedings, diaper changes, and precious little sleep. The twins established their personalities immediately. Sophia the louder, more demanding baby, Carmen quieter, but more alert. Ethan took a full 3 months away from his company, delegating responsibilities to his trusted team. He threw himself into fatherhood with the same intensity he had once reserved for coding, researching everything from optimal swaddling techniques to the latest studies on infant brain development. "You don't have to be perfect at this," Isabella reminded him one night as he paced with a fussy Sophia, consulting his phone about potential causes for her crying. "I want to get it right," he replied, the vulnerability clear in his voice. "There is no right," she said gently. "There's just love and patience and figuring it out together." Slowly, they established a rhythm as a family. Isabella began cooking again. Simple things at first, one-handed dishes she could prepare while holding a baby. The act of creating food centered her, reconnecting her to herself amid the all-consuming demands of new motherhood. On the twins' 3-month birthday, Ethan took Isabella to see the restaurant space he had purchased, her first time visiting since before the babies were born. "It's perfect," she breathed as they stood in the empty dining room, each holding a sleeping infant. The space featured high ceilings, exposed brick walls, and large windows overlooking a small courtyard. Exactly what I imagined. "It needs a lot of work," Ethan cautioned. "The kitchen equipment is outdated, and the layout will need changes." "I see the potential," Isabella replied, her mind already racing with possibilities. "I can create something special here." "When you're ready," he reminded her. "There's no rush." Isabella looked down at Carmen, sleeping peacefully against her chest, then across at Sophia in Ethan's arms. "I think I want to start planning now, but take it slow." "Maybe open when they're a year old?" Ethan nodded. "Whatever timeline works for you. We'll figure it out together." 6 months after the twins' birth, they held a combined christening and grand opening party at the partially renovated restaurant space. Friends and family gathered to celebrate both the babies and Isabella's dream taking shape. The construction wasn't complete, but the bones were there. The gleaming new kitchen visible through a glass partition, the bar area finished with reclaimed wood, the dining room painted in warm, welcoming colors. Isabella had prepared a tasting menu for the occasion, working alongside the chef she had hired to help develop her vision. Each dish told part of their story, from the mole that had first impressed Ethan to new creations inspired by their journey together. "A toast," Ethan announced, raising his glass as their guests gathered around. "To Isabella, who fed my body when I was hungry, my soul when I was empty, and now feeds our dreams as they grow alongside our daughters." Isabella, holding Sophia while her sister cradled Carmen, felt tears threatening. How far they had come from that first day in his kitchen, when he had been a distant employer and she an ambitious chef looking for stability. "And to Ethan," she added, raising her own glass, who gave me the ingredients for my dreams and helped me create something more beautiful than I could have imagined. That night, after the guests had gone and the babies were asleep in their cribs, Isabella and Ethan stood in the quiet of their home, arms wrapped around each other. "Did you ever imagine we'd be here?" she asked, her head resting against his chest. "That first day, when I arranged my knives on your counter." "Never," he admitted. "I hired a chef. I found a family." "When I sent you my resume, I was looking for security," Isabella mused. "A stable job with regular hours. Instead, I got twins and a restaurant, and a husband who still can't properly dice an onion." Ethan laughed, the sound rumbling against her ear. "I'm getting better." "You are," she agreed, looking up at him. "At all of it." In the nursery, one of the twins, Carmen, judging by the pitch, began to cry. They moved together automatically, a team now, in this as in everything. As they stood over the crib, soothing their daughter back to sleep, Isabella reflected on the unexpected recipe their lives had become. Like the best dishes, it contained elements of surprise, hints of complexity, moments of both sweetness and heat. And like her grandmother had taught her long ago, the secret ingredient was always love. Abundant, nourishing, transformative. In the soft glow of the nightlight, Ethan's hand found hers, their fingers interlaced, wedding bands touching, as Carmen's eyes fluttered closed again. "I never believed in fate," Ethan whispered. "I believed in code and logic and building things deliberately." "And now?" Isabella asked. "Now I believe in ingredients finding each other at exactly the right moment," he replied. "In flavors that were always meant to come together." Isabella smiled, understanding perfectly. Their story, unexpected, unplanned, but ultimately more delicious than anything she could have created alone, would continue to unfold, meal by meal, day by day, surprise by beautiful surprise. And she couldn't wait to taste what came next. A millionaire hires a private chef, then learns she's pregnant with his twins 1 year past in a beautiful blur of firsts. First smiles, first teeth, first words, first steps. The twins grew from tiny newborns into distinct little people, with personalities as different as their identical faces were similar. Sophia remained the bolder one, always first to try something new, while Carmen watched and analyzed before following with more careful precision. They balance each other, Isabella's grandmother observed during her visit for the twins' first birthday, like sweet and salt in a perfect dish. The celebration was held at Gimelos, Isabella's restaurant that had opened just 2 months earlier to glowing reviews and packed reservations. The space had been transformed from the empty shell Ethan had purchased into a warm, vibrant establishment that perfectly captured Isabella's culinary vision, sophisticated yet approachable, with elements of her Mexican heritage woven throughout both the decor and the menu. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "I never thought it would happen so quickly," Isabella admitted to Ethan as they watched their daughters toddling among the guests, receiving adoration and birthday wishes from friends and family. "The restaurant, the girls turning 1, everything at once." "You've always been good at multitasking," Ethan replied with a smile, slipping his arm around her waist. "And you have help." That was true. Isabella had assembled a talented kitchen team that allowed her to balance motherhood with her culinary career. She worked 3 nights a week at the restaurant, spending mornings and early afternoons with the twins, before heading to Gemelos for dinner service. On her nights off, she was home with Ethan and the girls, often testing new recipes in their kitchen with 2 eager little taste testers in high chairs nearby. Ethan had restructured his work life as well, delegating more responsibility to his executive team and working primarily from home. The man who once regularly pulled 100-hour weeks now strictly limited his working hours, prioritizing family dinners and bedtime stories over late-night coding sessions. "Mr. Blackwood, could I get a statement about the new security platform launch next month?" A business reporter who had been invited to cover the celebration approached, recorder in hand. "Today I'm just Dad," Ethan replied with an easy smile that would have been unimaginable 2 years earlier. "But you can schedule something through my office next week." The reporter nodded, looking between Ethan and Isabella with poorly disguised curiosity. Their story had fascinated the business press, the reclusive tech genius who had fallen for his private chef, their whirlwind romance and rapid family formation. Some articles painted it as a fairy tale, Others implied more cynical interpretations. "They still can't figure us out," Isabella observed after the reporter moved away. "Good," Ethan said simply. "Some recipes should remain secret." As the party wound down, Isabella found herself in a quiet corner of the restaurant with her grandmother, who was watching the twins play with Ethan. "He is a different man from the one you first described to me," the older woman said in Spanish. "You have transformed him." Isabella shook her head. "He transformed himself. I just created the right conditions." Her grandmother smiled knowingly. Like proving dough, the potential was always there, but it needed warmth and time and the right touch. She patted Isabella's hand. "You were always my most intuitive student in the kitchen. You understand that cooking is about more than following recipes. It's about creating environments where beautiful things can happen." Later that night, after the twins were asleep in their cribs and the house was quiet, Isabella found Ethan in his home office, staring thoughtfully at his computer screen. "What are you working on so intently?" she asked, coming to stand behind him. He quickly minimized the window. "Nothing important." "That looked like property listings," Isabella said, raising an eyebrow. "Are you hiding something from me, Mr. Blackwood?" Ethan sighed. "Caught. I wanted it to be a surprise. But since you're being nosy." He reopened the window, revealing photographs of a beautiful property in the countryside about an hour outside the city. A stone farmhouse surrounded by acres of land, complete with orchards and what appeared to be extensive gardens. "What is this?" Isabella asked, though she already had suspicions. "A possibility," Ethan replied, watching her reaction carefully. "Farm to table is the ultimate expression of what you've always talked about, controlling the entire story of the food, from soil to plate." Isabella stared at the images, her mind racing with possibilities. "You want to buy a farm?" "I want us to consider it," he corrected. "The property has an existing orchard, space for extensive gardens, and enough land for raising some animals if you wanted. The previous owners were already growing heirloom vegetables and keeping bees." "And the house?" 5 bedrooms, renovated kitchen, plenty of space for the girls to run and play." He clicked through more photos showing spacious, light-filled rooms with original wooden beams and stone fireplaces. "We wouldn't have to leave the city entirely. We could keep the house here for when you're working at the restaurant, use the farm as our weekend and summer place. Or whatever arrangement makes sense." Isabella sank into the chair beside him, overwhelmed by the vision he was presenting. "This is a big idea." "Too big?" he asked, suddenly uncertain. "No," she said slowly, still processing. "Just unexpected. Although I shouldn't be surprised, you do have a history of grand gestures." Ethan laughed. "Guilty as charged. But this isn't just a gesture. I've been thinking about what's next for us, for you professionally. The restaurant is already successful, but I know you've always talked about having more control over your ingredients." Isabella nodded, remembering their many conversations about her frustration with inconsistent produce quality and the challenges of sourcing truly exceptional ingredients. "We could start small," Ethan continued. "Learn as we go. Hire people with expertise." "The girls would love it," Isabella mused, imagining the twins running through orchards, collecting eggs, helping to plant seeds, growing up connected to where food comes from. "So you're interested?" Ethan asked, hope evident in his voice. Isabella studied the man before her, this brilliant, complicated person who had once been so closed off to life's possibilities and now constantly sought new horizons for their family. "Yes," she decided. "Let's look at it together." "But Ethan?" "If we do this, we do it together, not you buying it as another surprise. We plan it, learn about it, make decisions about it as partners." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. His smile was answer enough. Deal. The farm became their next adventure. After multiple visits and careful consideration, they purchased the property, which they named Dos Corazones, 2 hearts, a nod to both their twin daughters and their partnership. The learning curve was steep. Neither Isabella nor Ethan had any farming experience, so they hired a farm manager with organic agriculture expertise and began the process of education. Isabella approached it like learning a new cuisine, systematically, with respect for tradition, but an eye toward innovation. Ethan, ever the technologist, found ways to integrate smart systems for irrigation and monitoring soil conditions. Coding for cucumbers. Isabella teased him as he installed sensors throughout the garden beds. Laugh all you want, he replied good-naturedly. But wait until you see the data on optimal growing conditions. The twins, now approaching their second birthday, thrived in the country environment. They learned the names of plants before they could properly pronounce them, developed a fascination with the honeybees kept in hives at the edge of the property, and delighted in collecting eggs from the small flock of heritage breed chickens that now populated a stylish coop Ethan had designed himself. "Eggs, Mama!" Carmen would announce proudly, carefully carrying her find in small hands. "No break," Sophia would add, equally proud of her gentle handling. Isabella incorporated the farm into Gemelo's story, creating a special tasting menu featuring ingredients grown at Dos Corazones. Food writers took notice, and soon the restaurant had a months-long waiting list for reservations. "You've created something truly unique," a prominent critic told her after experiencing the tasting menu. "The connection between land and table is palpable in every bite." But success brought new challenges. Isabella found herself stretched thin between the restaurant, the farm, and motherhood. Though they had competent staff in all areas, she felt pulled in too many directions, unable to give any single aspect of her life the attention it deserved. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday when both twins developed high fevers simultaneously. Isabella had been scheduled to oversee a special event at Gemelos that evening, a dinner for influential food industry figures that had been planned for months. "Go to the restaurant," Ethan insisted as he administered children's fever reducer. "I've got this. They'll be fine." Isabella hesitated, torn between professional obligation and maternal instinct. "Their fevers are so high." "I'll call the pediatrician again if they go up at all," Ethan promised. "But right now, they need rest and monitoring, which I can provide. Your team needs you tonight." Reluctantly, Isabella went to the restaurant, her mind divided throughout the evening. The event was successful, the guests delighted, the food exceptional, but she felt a hollowness in the achievement. When she arrived home near midnight, she found Ethan asleep in the twins' room, his tall frame awkwardly arranged in the rocking chair between their cribs, a children's book fallen open on his lap. The girls slept peacefully, their fever broken. Isabella stood in the doorway, watching her family, a realization crystallizing within her. This balance she had been seeking, chef, farmer, mother, wife, required more honesty about her limits. The next morning, after Ethan had left for a rare day at his office and the twins were playing with their nanny, Isabella sat at the kitchen table with her notebook. She began writing, not recipes this time, but a plan for restructuring her professional life. When Ethan returned that evening, she was waiting with a glass of wine and dinner prepared, a simple roast chicken with vegetables harvested from their garden that morning. "We need to talk," she said as they sat down. Ethan looked concerned. "About?" "About balance, about choices." Isabella took a deep breath. "I've been trying to do everything at once. Run the restaurant, develop the farm, be present for the girls, be a good partner to you. And I'm failing at all of it by trying to succeed at everything simultaneously." "You're not failing," Ethan objected immediately. "You're doing an incredible job juggling it all." "Juggling is exactly the problem," Isabella replied. "I'm keeping everything in the air, but I'm not holding anything properly." She pushed her notebook across the table. "I've been thinking about a different approach." Ethan read her notes carefully, his expression thoughtful. Isabella had outlined a plan to step back from daily operations at Gemelos, promoting her sous chef to executive chef while she transitioned to a creative director role. She would develop seasonal menus and special events but limit her time in the restaurant kitchen to 2 nights a week. The farm would become her primary culinary focus, a living laboratory for ingredient development and education. "You want to teach?" Ethan asked, noting the section about cooking classes and agricultural education programs. Isabella nodded. "I want to share what we're learning about growing food, about connecting people to the sources of what they eat. Maybe eventually develop a small culinary program right here at the farm." "This is a significant shift," Ethan observed, still reading. "Too significant?" Isabella asked, suddenly uncertain. Ethan looked up, his eyes warm. "Not at all. It's brilliant, actually. It addresses what's been making you unhappy without abandoning what you've built." He reached for her hand across the table. But are you sure? Gemelos is your dream. Gemelos was my dream, she corrected gently. And it still is, in a way. But dreams evolve. The farm, teaching, developing new approaches to food, that's the dream now. A bigger dream that includes our family at its center. The transition wasn't simple or immediate, but over the following months, Isabella implemented her plan. The restaurant continued to thrive under her creative direction, while Dos Corazones evolved from a private family farm to an educational center. They converted an old barn on the property into a teaching kitchen, where Isabella began offering weekend workshops on seasonal cooking, preserving techniques, and the art of creating menus driven by what the land provided. My grandmother taught me that food tells stories. She would tell her students as they gathered around the massive farmhouse table. Here, we're learning to tell stories from seed to plate, understanding every character in the narrative. As the twins turned 3, Isabella discovered she was pregnant again, this time with a single baby boy. The pregnancy was easier than her first, perhaps because she had restructured her life to allow for more rest and reflection. A brother for the girls. Ethan marveled when they shared the news with the twins. "Baby in Mama's tummy?" Sophia asked, peering at Isabella's still flat abdomen with suspicion. "Very small now," Isabella explained, "but he'll grow bigger, like the seeds we plant in the garden." This comparison satisfied the twins, who immediately began suggesting garden-inspired names for their brother. Tomato was Sophia's first suggestion, while Carmen more practically offered basil. The pregnancy coincided with another development, a book deal. A publisher had approached Isabella after attending one of her farm workshops, impressed by her integrated approach to cooking and growing food. "We envision a cookbook that's also a farming manual and a family food philosophy," the editor explained. "Your story is unique." The chef who became a farmer who's redefining farm-to-table cooking. Writing the book became Isabella's project during her pregnancy. Each morning, she would sit in the farmhouse kitchen, the windows open to catch the country breeze, and write about their journey, from her first day arranging knives on Ethan's counter to the development of Dos Corazones. She wove recipes throughout the narrative. Not just instructions for cooking, but stories about where each ingredient came from, why it mattered, how it connected to her family's life. Ethan found her there one morning, typing while absently stroking her growing belly. "How's the book coming?" he asked, setting a cup of tea beside her. "It's becoming something different than I expected," she admitted. "Less a cookbook, more a story about transformation. About how food connects everything. People to each other, to the earth, to their own histories." "Sounds exactly right," Ethan said, reading over her shoulder. "Just like us. Not what either of us expected, but exactly what we needed." Their son, Gabriel Miguel Blackwood, was born on a perfect spring morning as the apple trees at Dos Corazones burst into bloom. Unlike the twins' early arrival, Gabriel came right on schedule, after a labor that Isabella described as challenging but straightforward, like reducing a complex sauce to its essence. The twins, now nearly 4, approached their brother with fascinating differences in temperament. Sophia immediately wanted to hold him, to show him things, to involve him in her world. Carmen was more reserved, observing him quietly, speaking to him in soft tones when she thought no one was listening. "We have a protector and a confidant," Ethan observed as they watched the girls interact with the baby. "He's going to be the most well-looked-after little boy in history." As Gabriel grew from newborn to infant, Isabella completed her book. Cultivating a Family Recipe was published to critical acclaim. Its beautiful photographs of farm life, food preparation, and family gatherings capturing the integrated life they had built. The book's success led to unexpected opportunities, speaking engagements, television appearances, invitations to consult on agricultural education programs. Isabella approached each selectively, balancing her growing public profile with her commitment to family life. On the twins' 5th birthday, they hosted a celebration at the farm that brought together the many threads of their life. Guests included the restaurant staff, farming mentors, culinary students, family, and friends. The long tables set up in the orchard overflowed with food harvested from their land and prepared by Isabella with help from her now quite capable husband and eager daughters. "A toast," Isabella's grandmother announced, rising with help from Ethan. "To my granddaughter, who has always understood that the most important ingredient in any recipe is love. She has created not just meals, but a life seasoned perfectly with purpose and joy." As glasses were raised, Isabella looked around at the gathering. Her culinary family from Gemelos, the farm staff who had taught her so much, the students who now carried her techniques to their own kitchens, and at the center, Ethan, with Gabriel on his lap and the twins leaning against his sides. That evening, after the guests had departed and the children were asleep, Isabella and Ethan walked through the quiet orchard, the string lights still twinkling above them. "Do you ever think about how differently things could have turned out?" Isabella asked, her hand in his. "If I hadn't answered that job listing, if you hadn't hired me." "I try not to," Ethan admitted. "It's a bit terrifying to think how close we came to never finding each other." "The best recipes sometimes happen by accident," Isabella mused. "Mistakes that turn into discoveries." Ethan stopped walking, turning to face her in the gentle light. "Was I a mistake that turned into a discovery?" Isabella laughed softly. "Maybe we both were. I was looking for stability when I applied to be your chef. You were looking for good meals when you hired me. Neither of us was looking for all of this." She gestured to encompass the farm, their home, their life together. "And yet here we are," Ethan said, pulling her close. "Here we are," she agreed. They continued walking, coming to the kitchen garden where, even in the dim light, they could see the neat rows of vegetables, herbs, and flowers, some planted by staff, others by their own children's small hands. "I've been thinking," Ethan said after a comfortable silence, "about what's next." Isabella smiled in the darkness. "You're always thinking about what's next." "It's the developer in me," he acknowledged. "Always looking for the next iteration, the next improvement." "And what are you developing now?" "A foundation," he said, "focused on culinary education for disadvantaged youth. Teaching cooking skills, yes, but also connections to agriculture, sustainability, nutrition. All the things you've shown me matter about food." Isabella stopped walking, touched by the thoughtfulness of the idea. "That sounds wonderful. I thought we could start small scholarships for a few students each year to attend a program here at the farm. Eventually, maybe expand to other locations, create a network of teaching farms and kitchens." "Using food to transform lives," Isabella said, immediately understanding the vision. "Like it transformed ours." "Exactly," Ethan confirmed. "What do you think?" Isabella looked up at the man beside her. So different from the closed-off employer she had met years ago, now constantly seeking ways to extend their good fortune to others. "I think it's perfect," she said. "A way to keep growing what we've built here, to share it more widely." They stood together in the garden they had created, surrounded by the ingredients of the life they had never expected to find. Above them, stars punctuated the dark sky like possibilities waiting to be discovered. "You know," Isabella said softly, "my grandmother always says that the true test of a recipe isn't just how it tastes the first time you make it, but how it evolves over years of making it, how you adjust it, refine it, make it more fully your own with each iteration. And how would you rate our recipe so far?" Ethan asked, his arm around her waist. Isabella considered the question seriously. Their beginning, a private chef and her solitary employer finding unexpected connection. The middle, twins, marriage, a restaurant, a farm, all happening in a whirlwind of creation and adjustment. The present, 3 beautiful children, thriving businesses, a deepening understanding of what mattered most. "I'd say our recipe is still developing," she answered finally. "Still finding new depths of flavor, still surprising us with what it can become." "The best kind," Ethan agreed. As they walked back toward the farmhouse where their children slept peacefully, Isabella thought about the countless meals she had prepared throughout her life, in her grandmother's kitchen, in culinary school, in prestigious restaurants, in Ethan's sleek modern kitchen, and now here at Dos Corazones. Each dish had been a creation, a statement, a moment of connection. But this life they had built together was her greatest creation. Not perfect, not without challenges, but authentic and nourishing in the ways that truly mattered. The lights of home guided them forward, and Isabella squeezed Ethan's hand, grateful for the unexpected recipe their lives had become. Complex, surprising, and infinitely more satisfying than anything she could have planned. Some ingredients find each other against all odds, creating flavors that neither could achieve alone. Some meals become memories that sustain us for a lifetime. And some kitchens, whether in penthouse apartments, busy restaurants, or quiet farmhouses, become the places where we discover not just new foods, but our truest selves and our most meaningful connections. For Isabella and Ethan, what had begun with the simple arrangement of knives on a counter had become a feast of possibility, a celebration of growth, and most importantly, a family recipe worth passing on for generations to come. A millionaire hires a private chef, then learns she's pregnant with his twins. 10 years passed, bringing seasons of growth, challenge, and deepening roots for the Blackwood family. The twins, Sophia and Carmen, now 15, had blossomed into remarkable young women with their mother's passion for food and their father's analytical mind. Gabriel, at 10, had developed his own distinct personality, thoughtful and observant, with an unexpected talent for photography that captured the beauty of their farm life in striking detail. Dos Corazones had evolved from a family retreat into a renowned culinary education center. The converted barn now housed a state-of-the-art teaching kitchen where students from around the world came to learn Isabella's philosophy of integrated cooking, connecting agricultural practices directly to culinary techniques. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. We've received over 300 applications for next summer's youth program. Isabella told Ethan one evening as they sat on the farmhouse porch, watching the sunset paint the orchards in gold. For just 20 spots. We could expand, Ethan suggested, not for the first time. Build another teaching facility, accept more students. Isabella sipped her tea thoughtfully. I worry about losing the intimacy, the personal connection. It's not just about teaching techniques, it's about mentorship, about transformation. The Blackwood Culinary Foundation, which they had established 7 years earlier, had indeed transformed lives. Their scholarship program provided full funding for promising young people from disadvantaged backgrounds to spend a summer at Dos Corazones, learning not just cooking skills, but a holistic approach to food, agriculture, and sustainability. Many graduates had gone on to significant culinary careers or started community food initiatives in their hometowns. Some returned to the farm as guest instructors, completing a circle of knowledge that brought Isabella particular satisfaction. "Mom!" Gabriel's voice called from inside the house. "Your phone's ringing. It's that producer lady again." Isabella exchanged a glance with Ethan. For months, a television network had been pursuing her to host a cooking show focused on farm-to-table practices. The concept was appealing, a chance to share her philosophy with a wider audience, but she remained hesitant about the public exposure and time commitment. "Let it go to voicemail," she called back. "I'll return it tomorrow." "Still undecided?" Ethan asked quietly. Isabella nodded. "The concept is right, but the format needs work. I don't want something glossy and unrealistic. If I do this, it needs to show the real work, the failures along with the successes, the challenges of growing food sustainably." "They'll come around to your vision," Ethan said with confidence. "They always do." It was true. Over the years, Isabella had developed a reputation not just for her culinary expertise, but for her authenticity and unwillingness to compromise her values for commercial appeal. Her cookbook series, now spanning 5 volumes, had maintained this integrity, combining practical wisdom with philosophical depth in a way that resonated with home cooks and professional chefs alike. The following morning brought unexpected visitors. As Isabella harvested herbs for the day's cooking class, a familiar car came up the drive. From it emerged Sophia, her former sous chef at Gemelos, now the restaurant's executive chef and a partner in the business. "Sophia," Isabella called in surprise. "Why aren't you at the restaurant?" "Special delivery," Sophia replied with a grin, opening the car's back door to reveal Isabella's grandmother, now in her 90s but still sharp-eyed and spirited. "Abuela." Isabella rushed forward, embracing the elderly woman carefully. "I wasn't expecting you until next week. Life is too short to wait when inspiration strikes," her grandmother replied in Spanish. "And I had an idea that wouldn't wait." Over lunch in the farmhouse kitchen, a simple but perfect meal of garden vegetables, fresh bread, and herb-infused oils, the elderly woman explained her unexpected visit. "I want to record my recipes," she said, her weathered hands gesturing expressively. "Not just the ingredients and methods, but the stories behind them, the memories, the people, the occasions, before they are lost. Quote, "We have many of your recipes in the cookbooks," Isabella replied, puzzled. "Not like this," her grandmother insisted. "I want to show you, to cook with you and the girls, to tell the stories as we work, to create a record that captures not just what we make, but why and how it connects us to those who came before." Understanding dawned on Isabella. "You want to create a family culinary archive?" The old woman nodded. "For 7 generations, the women in our family have passed these dishes down. But the world changes. The old ways of learning, daughter beside mother beside grandmother in the kitchen for years, those opportunities are rarer now. I want to create something that preserves not just recipes but wisdom." Isabella felt tears pricking her eyes, recognizing both the gift and the acknowledgement of mortality in her grandmother's request. "We'll start tomorrow," she promised. That conversation sparked a new project that would ultimately become one of Isabella's most meaningful contributions. Over the next several months, she worked with her grandmother, daughters, and a small documentary team to create Threads of Taste, a family's culinary heritage, a series that traced the evolution of recipes through generations and across borders. The filming process became a profound experience of intergenerational connection. The twins, initially self-conscious on camera, soon relaxed into the natural rhythm of cooking alongside their great-grandmother, absorbing techniques that could never be fully captured in written recipes. "Feel the dough," the elderly woman would instruct, guiding Carmen's hands. "It will tell you when it's ready." "How do you know without measuring?" Sophia would ask, watching her great-grandmother add spices by intuition. "Your senses are the best measuring tools," came the reply. "They connect you to every cook who came before you." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Ethan, observing these sessions from behind the camera, found himself deeply moved. "You're capturing something rare," he told Isabella one evening. "Something that transcends cooking." "Knowledge that can't be written down," she agreed. "Only transmitted through presence, through shared experience." The documentary series, initially intended as a private family archive, evolved into something with broader significance. When a rough cut was shared with Isabella's publisher, they immediately recognized its cultural and educational value. "This isn't just about Mexican cuisine or family recipes," the publisher told them. "It's about cultural preservation, about the wisdom embedded in traditional foodways that gets lost in standardized cookbook formats." With her grandmother's blessing, Isabella agreed to develop the project for public release, a series of films accompanied by a uniquely structured cookbook that emphasized sensory learning and cultural context alongside traditional recipe formats. The project launched a new phase in Isabella's career, that of cultural documentarian and preserver of traditional knowledge. As the twins entered their mid-teens and began thinking about their own futures, they became more involved in this aspect of their mother's work. "I want to study food anthropology," Carmen announced one evening at dinner. At 15, she had developed a scholarly interest in the cultural dimensions of cuisine, maybe minor in film or digital media. "And I want to study sustainable agriculture and business," Sophia added. "I've been talking to the farm manager about innovations we could implement here." Isabella and Ethan exchanged glances of pride and amusement. Their daughters had absorbed the family's integrated approach to food but were finding their own paths within it. "What about you, Gabriel?" Ethan asked their son, who had been quietly listening to his sisters. The boy considered the question seriously. "I think I want to keep taking pictures," he said finally, "but also learn about cooking and growing things. I like showing how it all connects." "A visual storyteller," Isabella nodded. The farm has always needed that perspective. As the children grew and developed their interests, Isabella and Ethan found themselves entering a new stage of partnership. With more established teams managing daily operations at the farm, foundation, and restaurant, they had space to explore new directions together. For Isabella's 50th birthday, Ethan surprised her with plans for a culinary research journey, 6 months traveling to indigenous food communities around the world, documenting traditional practices at risk of being lost to globalization and changing lifestyles. "We'll start in Peru," he explained, showing her the carefully crafted itinerary. "Then Bolivia, Ecuador, moving through traditional food cultures that have maintained their ancient connections to the land." Isabella was speechless, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gift. But the children, the farm, the foundation. The children will join us for parts of the journey during their school breaks, Ethan explained. The farm has an excellent management team. The foundation can be overseen remotely. He took her hands. You've created resilient systems, Isabella. They can thrive without your daily presence for a while. And you? Your company? Ethan smiled. I've been gradually stepping back for years, you know that. The current CEO is doing an excellent job. I remain on the board, but my active role has naturally diminished. He squeezed her hands. This is our time now. To explore together, to learn, to bring back knowledge that will enrich everything we've built here. The journey proved transformative, not just for Isabella and Ethan, but for their entire enterprise. In remote villages and indigenous communities, they documented cooking techniques that had remained unchanged for centuries. Preservation methods perfectly adapted to local conditions, and crop varieties unknown to conventional agriculture. Isabella approached each community with profound respect, positioning herself as student rather than expert, despite her considerable knowledge. This humility opened doors that might otherwise have remained closed to outsiders. In the Andean highlands, they learned about ancient varieties of potatoes preserved through communal farming practices. In coastal villages, they documented fish preservation techniques that required no refrigeration or modern technology. In forest communities, they studied sophisticated systems of food gathering that maintained ecological balance. When they returned to Dos Corazones, they brought not just recipes and techniques, but a deeper philosophy about food sovereignty and the importance of preserving diverse food traditions in an increasingly homogenized global system. Food knowledge is disappearing faster than rainforest species, Isabella explained to journalists who covered their return. When an elder dies without passing on their culinary wisdom, we lose not just recipes but entire systems of understanding about plants, about ecological relationships, about cultural meanings embedded in food practices. This perspective informed a new direction for the Blackwood Culinary Foundation, the establishment of a global network dedicated to documenting and preserving endangered food traditions. With funding from both the foundation and strategic corporate partners identified by Ethan, they created an open-source digital platform where communities could record their traditional foodways on their own terms. The goal isn't to extract knowledge, Isabella emphasized in her TED Talk on the initiative, which quickly became one of the organization's most viewed presentations. It's to support communities in preserving and celebrating their own food heritage, creating records that can be shared with future generations on their own terms. The twins, now 17 and preparing for college, had participated in portions of the global journey and returned with clarified visions for their futures. Carmen was accepted to an anthropology program with a specialized track in food studies, while Sophia pursued a dual degree in agricultural science and business. Will they come back to Dos Corazones? A journalist asked in an interview about the family's evolving legacy. That's for them to decide, Isabella answered. We've never seen the farm as an obligation for our children, but as a foundation from which they can grow in whatever direction calls to them. Privately, however, Isabella and Ethan had begun discussions about the long-term future of everything they had built. The farm, the educational programs, the foundation, Isabella's growing media presence, and Ethan's continued involvement with his technology company. We need to think about succession planning, Ethan noted one evening as they reviewed the farm's 5-year projections. Not because we're going anywhere soon, but because thoughtful transitions take time. Isabella nodded, understanding the importance of this conversation despite her reluctance to consider a future where she might step back from daily involvement with the farm. I've been thinking about an apprenticeship model, she admitted, identifying people who embody our values and methodically transferring knowledge and responsibility. For all aspects of the operation? Ethan asked. Yes, though I imagine the restaurant, farm, and foundation might each have different timelines and approaches. She smiled suddenly. Though I'm not ready to retire to a rocking chair just yet. I should hope not, Ethan laughed. I was thinking more about creating space for new chapters while ensuring what we've built continues to thrive. New chapters emerged sooner than expected. 6 months after their conversation about succession planning, Isabella received an offer that challenged her to expand her vision once again. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization invited her to serve as a special ambassador for traditional and indigenous food systems, leveraging her unique combination of culinary expertise, educational experience, and documentary work. "They want me to help create a global inventory of endangered food traditions," she explained to Ethan after the video call. "To develop educational resources, policy recommendations, and preservation strategies." "It sounds perfect for you," Ethan observed. "A natural evolution of the work you've already been doing." Isabella nodded slowly. "But it would mean more travel, more time away from Dos Corazones." "The farm will be here," Ethan reminded her gently. "And this work matters. It's the logical next step for the vision you've been developing since we started the foundation." After careful consideration and family discussion, Isabella accepted the position. The timing coincided with another significant transition: the twins' departure for college. With both girls embarking on their own journeys and Gabriel now 12 and increasingly independent, the rhythm of family life was naturally shifting. To accommodate her new responsibilities while maintaining connections to the farm, Isabella and Ethan developed a balanced approach. 3 months of the year would be dedicated to global field work. 3 months to intensive teaching and documentation at Dos Corazones, and the remainder divided between writing, consulting, and family time. The arrangement proved invigorating rather than depleting. Isabella's global work brought fresh perspectives and techniques back to the farm, while the consistent periods at Dos Corazones kept her grounded in the practical realities of growing food and maintaining a teaching program. On her 55th birthday, as Isabella stood in the farm's orchard watching the sunset with Ethan beside her, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a simple job interview 20 years earlier. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked, gesturing to encompass the thriving educational farm, the distant lights of the teaching kitchen where students were preparing dinner, the orchard rows where heritage varieties had been preserved and propagated. "Not in my wildest dreams," Ethan admitted, his arm around her waist. "I hired a chef to cook my meals. I didn't expect her to cook up an entirely new life." Isabella leaned against him, grateful for his steady presence through all the evolutions of their shared journey. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't answered that job posting, if I hadn't arranged my knives on your counter that first day." "I prefer not to think about it," Ethan said, tightening his arm around her. "Some alternate timelines are better left unexplored." A comfortable silence fell between them as the last rays of sunlight gilded the distant hills. From the main house, they could hear laughter. Gabriel and his friends working on a photography project, the farm staff gathering for their evening meal, the steady pulse of a home that had become much more than a dwelling place. "We should head in," Isabella said eventually. "The students will be presenting their farm-to-table creations soon." As they walked back toward the lights of the farmhouse, hand in hand, Isabella felt a profound sense of alignment between her initial passion for food and the multifaceted life that had grown from it, between her professional achievements and personal fulfillments, between the roots she had established at Dos Corazones and the wings she had developed through her global work. The kitchen lights glowed welcomingly as they approached. Inside, students from 3 continents were putting final touches on dishes created from ingredients they had helped to grow. Through the window, Isabella could see Gabriel setting up his camera to document their work, his artistic eye evident even from a distance. "You know," Ethan said thoughtfully as they paused at the threshold, "I used to think success was about building something that would last forever, unchanged. A perfect system, a flawless code." "And now?" Isabella asked. "Now I understand that the most beautiful things we create are meant to evolve," he replied. "Like recipes that change with each generation while keeping their essence. Like this farm. Like us." Isabella squeezed his hand, recognizing the wisdom in his words. Their story had never been static, from private chef and reclusive employer to partners, parents, and creators of something larger than themselves. Each chapter had built upon the last while opening doors to unexpected possibilities. As they entered the kitchen, greeted by the warm smiles of students eager to share their creations, Isabella felt a certainty that had grown stronger with each passing year. Life's most nourishing recipes were those that remained open to adaptation, that balanced tradition with innovation, that found flavor in unexpected combinations. Their unlikely beginning, a millionaire hiring a private chef, discovering she carried his twins, had been just the first ingredients in a feast that continued to unfold in ways neither could have anticipated. The twins, now young women forging their own paths, carried forward the values they had absorbed at Dos Corazones while adding their unique perspectives. Gabriel, observing the world through his camera lens, preserved moments that might otherwise slip away unnoticed. And Isabella and Ethan, 20 years into their shared journey, continued to discover new depths in their partnership, new possibilities in the life they had created together, new ways to nourish not just each other, but the expanding circles of their influence. It wasn't a perfect story. There had been challenges, disagreements, moments of doubt along the way, but it was authentic, rich with meaning, and still unfolding with each season's turning, each new idea, each student who carried their teachings to distant communities. As Isabella took her place at the head of the long farm table, Ethan beside her and Gabriel capturing the moment with his camera, she offered a toast that encompassed the journey behind them and the path still ahead. To ingredients finding their perfect partners, she said, raising her glass. To recipes that evolve while honoring their origins. To nourishment that feeds not just the body but the spirit. And to the unexpected turns that lead us exactly where we need to be. The glasses clinked in harmony, and in that moment Isabella knew with absolute certainty that the most extraordinary creations often begin with the simplest of encounters. A chef arranging her knives, a meal prepared with care, a connection that transforms everything that follows. Their story would continue to evolve, to adapt, to incorporate new elements while maintaining its essential flavors. Like the most beloved family recipes, it would be passed along, reinterpreted, kept alive through sharing. And in that ongoing process of creation and recreation, the true meaning of their journey would continue to reveal itself, season after season, generation after generation, a feast without end. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Most importantly, they transformed Emma's penthouse into a real home. Photographs of Isabella's milestones covered the refrigerator. Maya's plants thrived on windowsills. The enormous living room became a play area where Isabella's toys mingled with adult furniture in joyful chaos. Emma learned to cook simple meals while Maya mastered the technology that could make their lives easier. The transformation wasn't just physical. Emma found herself approaching business decisions through the lens of their impact on families like Maya's. She restructured Richardson Technologies to prioritize work-life balance, created on-site childcare for employees, and launched mentorship programs for single mothers pursuing education or career advancement. Maya discovered that accepting help didn't diminish her independence when it came without conditions or expectations. She maintained her own bank account, her own friendships, her own dreams for the future. But she also learned to share burdens that had once felt overwhelming, to accept that love could multiply resources rather than diminish them. Isabella thrived in their blended family, equally comfortable in both homes, surrounded by adults who prioritized her happiness above all else. She started taking piano lessons, art classes, and swimming, all the enrichment activities Maya had dreamed of providing but never thought possible. One evening, 18 months after that fateful bus ride, Emma found Maya writing in her diary at the kitchen table of what was now their shared apartment. They'd kept Maya's place as their primary residence, using the penthouse for entertaining and as a retreat when they needed space. "What are you writing about?" Emma asked, settling beside Maya with a cup of tea. Maya smiled, closing the diary and leaning against Emma's shoulder. "About miracles that arrive disguised as mistakes. About how losing something on a bus can lead to finding everything you never knew you needed." Emma wrapped her arms around Maya, marveling at how natural this intimacy had become. Their relationship had evolved gradually from friendship to something deeper, built on foundations of trust, shared values, and mutual respect. They'd learned to navigate the complexities of their different backgrounds while creating something entirely new together. "Any regrets?" Emma asked, kissing the top of Maya's head. "Only that I waited so long to trust that good things could happen to us," Maya replied. "Isabella deserves this kind of love, this kind of stability. And so do I." Their story continued to unfold in daily moments of ordinary magic. Bedtime stories shared between three voices. Birthday parties that mixed Maya's neighborhood friends with Emma's business associates. quiet evenings when work and worry faded in favor of simply being together. Emma had discovered that true wealth couldn't be measured in bank accounts, but in the fullness of a life built on love, purpose, and connection. The diary that started their journey remained on Maya's nightstand, its pages chronicling not just the struggles of single motherhood, but the transformation that occurred when two people from different worlds chose to build bridges instead of walls. Emma had found her purpose not in accumulating more success, but in using her resources to create opportunities for others. Maya had found that accepting help from someone who truly cared didn't diminish her strength but amplified it. As they prepared for bed in their small apartment, now expanded to include the adjacent unit Emma had quietly purchased, Isabella asleep between them in the king-sized bed that barely fit in the bedroom, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them together. A forgotten diary on a city bus had revealed not just one woman's struggles, but the universal human need for connection, understanding, and love. Their story proved that the most valuable discoveries often came disguised as accidents, that wealth meant nothing without people to share it with, and that the courage to be vulnerable with another person could transform everything. Emma had found her family in the most unexpected place, and Maya had learned that some dreams were worth the risk of believing in them. The billionaire who found a single mother's diary had discovered that the greatest fortune wasn't what she could accumulate but what she could give away: her heart, her time, her resources, her love. In return, she'd received something priceless: a life filled with meaning, connection, and the kind of happiness that money could never buy, but love could create in abundance. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.